Hey, Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. And today we have a unique one for you, one that is confronting, difficult to hear, but at the same time, very, very powerful. And so, with that, today I'd like to welcome attorney Scott Spradley to our show. Scott, welcome to the episode.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I appreciate the courage it takes. And you're a pretty fearless guy. It's one of the things I've learned about you already. You're it takes a lot to throw you off. Now, you've practiced law for 36 years, and you've practiced very successfully for 36 years. So let's talk for a minute about your practice before I pivot on you.
Sure. I am a native North Carolinian and came to Florida for college. I played golf and I got a golf scholarship at the University of Miami. And that's where I started. And I basically never left Florida. So after law school in Tallahassee, um, I moved to Orlando. I was with the Gray Robinson firm for quite a while. I started their bankruptcy and creditors' rights department. And then somewhere along the line, divorce came knocking on my doorstep, as it does for many. And so I moved to Flagler Beach, where my wife at the time and I had a second home. And my practice has been the same from the beginning. I have a mixture of bankruptcy, in which I represent debtors and creditors, and I have an estate planning practice. So that's the mix that I have had for a long time and continue to do that here in Flagler Beach.
You were at a high-end firm doing high-end work. And of course, coping with stress is something that you see a lot of lawyers have to deal with. What are their coping mechanisms? How do they cope? What do they cope with? And so that was a question for me. This was like normal life for you. You looked around and did you ever question at that point in time in your life, like maybe I have a drinking problem? Or did you just
Yep.
say this is the way the world works?
My wife would point out on occasion, she was kind enough to let me know that maybe I was drinking a little too much here and there. But it really, I guess my mentally, I was so keyed in to the fact that I did not see any consequences. Therefore, it must not be a problem. The only consequence I had was that, having a wife who pointed out that, hey, look, you're drinking more, it seems, than you used to. I found these bottles, in the garage, things such as that. And rather than be a wake up call for me, that just made me a better hider. I perfected my manner of drinking, privately. But it truly didn't dawn on me that I had a problem. I just, in fact, if anything, I kind of deflected it back on her. When we became divorced, her at some point, my divorce lawyer shared with me that her divorce lawyer shared with her uh, that my wife had a drinking problem. And I was shocked, and I think my response at the time was, you know what? I don't have a drinking problem, but if I do, it's because of her. And absolutely believe that to this
Well, it
day.
makes perfect sense. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm in a divorce. I don't have a drinking problem. I have an ex-wife problem or, a wife problem.
Yeah.
That's
And
why I'm
that's what it was. And it was even more delicate because she too was a partner, a shareholder at the Gray Robinson firm. And so she had the ability to have her eye on me more than was comfortable when all this was going on. So, and again, rather than react to it positively, what I did was just make it more secret. And it was, looking back on it, it's like, how on earth was I able to miss all these signals and everything that was popping up, but I just didn't do it. And another thing, now that I've had a nice track record of sobriety and I can reflect on some of these things, and I said a few minutes ago that I had no consequences. Well, you know what? I did have consequences. I think it bore heavily on the demise of my marriage. I think I could have been a lot better lawyer and leader at Gray Robinson than I was when I look back on it. I think I could have been a better dad than I was because there's a lot of time that's spent, drinking and nourishing that part of my life. Um, when I finally quit, uh, which was which was quite an accomplishment given where I was. But someone said to me, and and I realized it to be true. My relationship with alcohol was the longest uninterrupted relationship I had had with anybody or anything, in my lifetime other than my parents.
You said this a couple of different times. One of the reasons you drank is to cope with stress and to cope with life. And it sounded like to me when you're telling your story that one of the ways that you cope with not drinking immediately in the first year, which had to be brutal, was walking, not the beach, Target, PetSmart, and I think Dollar General is what you said, right?
I did.
And you were using those as coping mechanisms. What other coping mechanisms have you developed, uh, strategically to avoid alcohol?
Well, for me, trying to be healthy, try to focus on exercise, things like that, getting the right, correct eating habits helped. But and this is personal to me, I had an interest in photography. And so I have a nephew who's actually a professional photographer. So I talked to him a little bit about it, about how can I develop this interest. I went to Creole Art School in Winter Park at nights, took some digital photography classes. I had a professor who took an interest in my work. One thing led to another. And so photography is actually a second business for me. I have work in three galleries, one here in Flagler Beach and two in North Carolina. And so that, I mean, that's personal to me. I mean, you don't have to embark on that kind of a hobby necessarily, but for me, that occupied the time that I need. So it was just another, just trying to steer my interest into a different but healthy direction. Um, and that's what did it for me, along with helping others in the recovery community. That takes a large block of my time, which, and I'm glad to do it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it. And while it sounds like, wow, what a benevolent guy he is, there's a selfish aspect to it too. Because when I began to tell others my story early on, um, that's not all that common. A lot of those who are in recovery and are successful at it, it's a deep, dark secret. And that's fine. I mean, to me, whatever your sobriety plan is, whatever works is what works. For me, now that I look back on it, um, I think part of my motivating factor for telling others my story was to be accountable. Because I was like paying myself into a corner. The more people I tell, the harder I'm making it for myself to change and go back to it. So there was that little bit of selfishness in there, but it was there. And so I do, between my law practice, dealing with the city of Flagler Beach, attempting to have a personal life, and then photography, but trying to get the word out to others to, and I'm not a counselor, I'm not an addiction therapist. All I like to do is say, look, brother or sister, if you think there's a problem, then explore that. And I can send you some materials or direct you to where you may be able to get some help if you want it. I know for a lot of people, and this is one of the problems in the recovery community, is that's having the realization that you have to want it for yourself. You have to want to stop and reboot and fix the problem. I know the halls of AA are lined with men and women who are sitting on the outskirts, not at the table, but around the edges with arms folded, looking down. And I know right away who they are. I know exactly who they are. They came not because they wanted to come. They became because they were sent either by their spouse or by their employer or by the judge. And the success rate of those who go to any kind of recovery meeting, not of their own accord, but because being sent there under the threat of losing a marriage, a job, or their liberty, is it's not actually the greatest motivator to take it seriously. I've had some talks with a couple of local judges here in Flagler County and in Volusia County, about the fact that, it's automatic under certain circumstances that you're arrested for DUI. You have to go do 30 AA meetings, bring your sign off sheet to the judge before you can get a break on whatever your penalty is going to be. The message that is delivered that it's punishment when it's in fact a great tool, but so many people don't really understand that off the bat, and understandably so. Um, but it's just the idea that there can be resources available is not the end of the story. It's a matter of how to approach those resources, how to use them properly. And it all starts with you wanting to make the change yourself.